right, we're on record today for a review. May I have the names of our participants, please?
Lee Heiss, lawyer, guardian ad litem.
Ms. Sasha Thomas, counsel for the department. And on behalf of the private agency is Ms. Ashley Beach, who has stepped away for a moment, and she is covering for the main foster care worker, Christy Brinker.
Christy Brinker?
Brinker, yes.
Okay.
Suzanne Wilhelm, covering for Mr. McFarland and representing Bonnie McGee,
Bonnie McGee.
Thank you.
mother.
Okay, Mr. Brooks, unmute on your end and give us your appearance.
Michael Brooks appearing on behalf of the father, Skylar Stage. I understand we're still waiting to see if we can connect with the Hillsdale County Jail.
That's accurate. I did ask Ms. Beach if she'd be willing to reach out, noticing that Skylar was not produced for our review hearing today. He has successfully been able to participate by Zoom from the jail in the past, so she's going to get us an update on that. And in the meantime, we'll begin our proceedings with updates from Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did observe the child face to face. The child was in a visit with mother, and you know, it's a mixed bag of parenting skills. Mother is due to have a new child coming up, and this little one is in a very stable placement, and she is really smart. She's really meeting developmental milestones, and a very healthy child. And this mom, the day that I visited, did have the things that the child needed to eat, and appropriately supervised her playing and doing lots of fun things. And the child is aware and bonded with mother. And as we know, mother's substance abuse continues to be a barrier to parenting children, and she's not doing the services that are laid out in front of her. But we're very early in this case, so we're hoping that mother will comply with case services and benefit from those services, and be able to be reunified in the future. Thank you.
Looks like Ms. Beach is back. Ms. Thomas?
Thank you. Ms. Beach can be sworn in.
Deputy?
Thank you. Ms. Beach, how are you familiar with this case?
I'm the assigned foster care supervisor.
And as a supervisor, do you provide direct services or case management to this family?
Not directly. I supervise the worker who provides the direct services.
And as part of supervision, do you review the worker's case contacts and the court reports?
Yes, and we have frequent discussions regarding the case progress and concerns.
And today the court has in front of it a court report drafted by Ms. Brinker, but also signed by you, correct?
Correct.
And then there's a case service plan for Ms. McGee and Mr. Stage. And then there's a progress report for Ms. McGee from McCullough Vargas and Associates, and then drug screens for Ms. McGee. Is that correct?
Correct.
Are there any other documents that have been circulated since the submission of this court report?
No.
And are there any updates or modifications that need to be made to this report or the case service plan to the best of your knowledge?
Not at this time.
At this time, the child remains in foster care, is that correct?
Yes.
And relative placement was and continues to be assessed?
Yes.
And to date, has there been any approved relative placement?
Not at this time.
Okay. As it relates to Mr. Stage, were you able to contact Hillsdale County Jail to see if he would be available?
Yes, I did, and they said they were going to get him logged in.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And during this last review period, how would you describe, we'll just work with Ms. McGee at this point, how would you describe mom's level of compliance with and benefit from her case service plan?
Her engagement in services is of concern. She is continuing to participate in parenting time, but she has not been consistently engaged in substance abuse counseling. And she has tested positive for amphetamine and methamphetamine twice during this reporting period. That is of concern because she is in the third trimester of her current pregnancy and has a history of methamphetamine use. It's also of concern that she continues to have contact with Mr. Stage via phone. She has done this during parenting time visits with Shelby, and there's an active no contact order in place in Steuben County, Indiana, due to charges that were incurred there.
And given that, what would be the risk of harm if the child were to be returned to her care and custody today?
There would be risk of exposure to substance abuse and instability on behalf of Ms. McGee, and the concerns regarding domestic violence continue to exist at this time. So that would be a concern as well.
Has Ms. McGee engaged in individual counseling?
She has engaged in some individual counseling through Macola Vargas. The last appointment that she attended that we were aware of was on November 27th. She did report that she had a session scheduled for January 22nd, but we have not been able to confirm if she went to that appointment yet.
And are you aware of any barriers that may preclude Ms. McGee from participating in any services?
I'm not.
In your report, it indicates, or Ms. Winkler's report indicates that parenting time is offered 3 times a week. One of those being supervised or a parent education component. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
One moment, please. I just want to note for the record, I believe we have had Skylar Stage join us from Hillsdale County Jail. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, may we have your name, please?
Skylar Stage.
Thank you. Welcome. Your attorney, Mr. Brooks, is also here today. So in the event that it becomes noisy from your end, is there a way, if I mute you, that you'd be able to unmute if you need to?
We will try. I'm gonna stay in here, so.
Yeah, I figured I'd address that before, because sometimes with the jail, it gets noisy. So I'll mute you and you can see if it'll.
Okay, so I'm gonna unmute you guys, and then when you're ready to talk to them, I'll unmute.
Thank you, appreciate
Yeah. Ms. Beach, now that Mr. Stage has joined us, can you briefly summarize his level of compliance with the benefit from his case service plan, considering that it is tailored to his incarceration?
Yes. So Mr. Stage continues to be incarcerated at the Hillsdale County Jail. He has started participating in mental health services through Lifeways in Hillsdale and reports being prescribed Seroquel to help with managing anger and mood. He has read the first 2 to 3 chapters of the parenting book that the agency has sent to him, and he has sent the correlating workbook chapters back to the worker. It is anticipated that he will be incarcerated at the Hillsdale County Jail until May of this year, and then he may be transferred to Indiana to serve time for charges incurred there. He has continued to have contact with Ms. McGee via phone, and he has called during her parenting time visits with Shelby. And like I said, for Ms. McGee, that is of concern because there is a no contact order in place, and concerns between the two of them have not yet been rectified through services.
And what is the risk of harm if the court were to return the child to Mr. Stage's care and custody today?
Well, his incarceration and not knowing when he will complete his sentences, and his history as a perpetrator of is also of concern.
Is parenting time being offered to Mr. Stage in any way?
We have discussed virtual parenting time when Miss Nolan was the worker. She had set some up, but then there were issues getting it coordinated with the jail. So Miss Brinker went to see Mr. Stage on the 22nd, just last Monday, and discussed virtual parenting time visits with the jail, and she's going to be setting virtual visits up.
I'm sorry, that last part broke up. Could you repeat that last sentence, please?
Miss Brinker is going to be working on setting virtual visits up with Mr. Stage.
And how old is this child?
16 months.
He is 1.
And so for virtual parenting time, is there a recommendation about like length, duration, etc., for a child of that age?
We would start with very short visits because she would not be able to hold her attention very long based on her age, but short and probably 1 to 2 visits a month to start with to see how she does and responds.
Thank you. And the goal in this case is reunification still at this point?
It is.
And what is the, I guess, the priority for addressing the barriers to reunification for Ms. McGee?
I would say addressing her needs as it relates to substance abuse, participating in the recommended services to help her obtain and maintain her sobriety, and address the concerns relating to domestic violence so she does not perpetuate the pattern with Mr. Stage or with another partner in the future.
Is there anything from the court report or your knowledge of the case that you would like the court to, that you would like to highlight for the court?
I don't think so. I think the court report is thorough and accurate.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions of this witness and move to admit the court report.
Objections?
No objection.
I have no objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
Thank you. They are received. Questions for this witness, Mr. Brooks?
It sounds like my client is communicating with your department pretty effectively. Am I right or wrong about that?
He sends mail, and we do the same at least monthly, and he does participate in visits when scheduled by the worker, with the worker.
All right. This is pretty much the extent to which he is able to participate, correct?
He has access to the mental health services through Lifeways in Hillsdale, and he's also been provided with a parent education book that he can complete chapters in. But at this time, due to his incarceration, yes, those are the things that we are expecting of him while he's incarcerated.
Thank you. That's all.
Yes. So, Ms. Beach, but Ms. McGee is participating in parenting time, correct?
Correct.
She doesn't miss any of those, does she?
She's missed 3 visits this reporting period and has been late a couple of times, but she attends the majority of the scheduled visits.
Okay, and does she come prepared for those visits?
Approximately 50% of the time she comes prepared with a diaper bag, but the other half of the time she does not and relies on what the foster parents provide.
Okay, so does she, the other 50% of the time, not bring a diaper bag at all, or is it that the diaper bag is deficient?
I would have to ask the worker for those details, but what was reported by the worker is that she comes prepared with a diaper bag approximately 50% of the time.
Okay, so, but you don't know whether she brings a diaper bag and that she's just missing some things that she could be informed of now, but she can ask Ms. Brinker.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, So, do you agree with Ms. Heiss that well, you probably haven't watched her in the parenting time, have you?
I have not supervised the parenting time.
Okay, all right, I'll scrap that question, but I would like to talk for a minute about her engagement with McCullough Vargas. So you said that or in the court report, it says that she had another visit scheduled for 1/24/24. Is that correct?
It was either, oh yes, it was 1/24/2024, correct.
Okay, and do you have information that Ms. McGee did not attend?
Not at this time.
Okay, so you wouldn't be surprised to hear that she did attend if she says so, is that right?
No.
Okay. Now, let's see. Are you aware too that she has a recovery coach?
Ms. Brinker did report that she has a peer recovery coach through McCullough Vargas.
Okay, do you have any information on her engagement with this recovery coach?
That the recovery coach and therapist said that they had not seen her since 11/27. So if they did see her on January 24th, that's information that we'll have to obtain from the therapist and the recovery coach, but I do not have any other information aside from that.
Okay, and I will just inform you, because I'm sure you can't see the courtroom. The recovery coach is here today. Just so you know. You can't see it. Okay, thank you. That'd be it.
Questions, Ms. Heiss?
Yes, Ms. Beach, do you know if the mother in this case has a valid driver's license?
Oh, I'm not sure. I would have to consult with the worker on that.
Okay, the McCullough Vargas report seems to report that obtaining a valid driver's license is a goal. But I think she's driving herself to visits, isn't she?
I'm not for certain, but I believe that her mother also assists with transportation to visits.
These screens that you're taking, I assume your agency saw her in person when she took these screens, correct?
Yes.
And were they on days of visits?
Yes.
So one thing that wasn't provided were the supervisor notes, but were the visits allowed to progress on these days where she tested, the cutoff is 12 nanograms and she tested 145 nanograms for methamphetamine. Was she allowed to visit that day?
Yes, there were no concerns that she was actively under the influence during her scheduled parenting time visits, and we don't get the results for those screens until after like several days or a week after we take the screen. But there were no concerns under the influence.
Could it be that your supervisor is not observant of this? Are they trained? Can you increase, like for example, a Ms. Brinker or yourself or someone assessing the intoxication before the visit starts?
Yes, and we can provide training on that to our visitation staff as well.
All right, so is this mother employed?
Yes, she reports that she is employed at some local gas stations, the Lightning Quick Gas and Go gas stations.
Is she, has she been evaluated for inpatient treatment?
I'm not sure if that evaluation has taken place. She did
Oh,
participate in a
something's happened. Something happened with your microphone. It sounded like you were trying to talk to us from underwater. So maybe you could start that one again.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. She did participate in a psychological evaluation in July of 2023. And the recommendations from that were services for substance abuse counseling, but it did not specify whether it was inpatient or outpatient.
So what can we do if there's an inpatient bed available for this pregnant mother and maybe she can keep the newly to be birthed child if she were clean at birth? What can we do to make that situation happen for her?
We can contact Macola Vargas and see if they are able to refer for an inpatient assessment or tell us how we can make that referral, and then see if Miss McGee qualifies based on that assessment.
Because there are some inpatient facilities where she can have her children with her. Is that right?
That is my understanding. I don't know which ones those are, but I have heard that before, yes.
So the SUD evaluation from July of 2023, I don't know that that's in my records. The other thing that I'm wondering is the police reports from Indiana and other places that surrounded the removal of this child. Is that something that you have in your file?
I'm not sure that we have them in our file, but we can request them and submit them to the court.
This case came from out of county and the petition is pretty brief. Would you agree?
Yes.
The allegations in the petition are really brief. And so it says that someone was using, but I don't know what tests they used. And if you get those reports, would you be willing to share them with me?
Yes, of course. And
then,
when we got the case from out of county, it took some time to get the assessment, the psychological evaluation that she had done in July. So I will check and see if that has been submitted to the court or not. And if it hasn't, we will make sure that's submitted as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I have nothing further at this time.
Okay, Ms. Beach, you've read through the psychological evaluation, or are you at least familiar with the things that were flagged by the psychologist afterwards?
I've discussed it with Ms. Brinker. I don't have a copy in front of me, but I can pull it up.
Well, that's all right. I have a lot of concerns with this mother being testing positive in the last few weeks, even for amphetamine, methamphetamine, and THC more than one time. The use was reflected at our last review hearing as well. She's not engaged in any kind of interventions at this time that I can see that would alleviate any risk of harm associated with allowing her to keep this child in her care when it's born. We had a very significant flag on the child abuse potential inventory. Her score on that was elevated to 296, whereas the norm is 166. She's got a lot of really serious things that he identified that could get in the way of her parenting successfully, which do seem to be reflected in the challenges she continues to look at. So the long and the short of it is, what is the plan when this woman gives birth? Because I've also looked at the court report and I understand that where she's living is not a safe place for the child to be at. And even if she found an inpatient rehab facility, with the rest of the issues that were identified on the psychological evaluation, help me understand what we're doing in order to make sure that there's a safe plan for mom and child once this child potentially is born on, it looks like February 14th.
Well, we have concerns as well, which are identified within the report. And our plan would be to contact centralized intake and file a complaint with our concerns. And then CPS should get involved at that point and investigate. And we'll be able to work with CPS to discuss what is the best plan to ensure the safety of both children, but the child that is to be born on February 14th.
This child is in non-relative foster care placement, is that right?
Yes. Correct.
Has that placement been approached about potentially taking the sibling?
They have been. They have other children in their care at this time, and I'm not sure that they are able to take placement of another child. The relatives that we have assessed, there were concerns identified with each, but we are willing to reassess each of them to see if the concerns that were identified at the time of the initial home visit, if any of them have been rectified enough so that placement of the siblings together can occur with a relative if the new sibling enters foster care.
Looking at the court report, it looks like Ms. Brinker has done that, and that the concerns have not been addressed by either of the requested relatives. So I guess what I want to know is, are you able to do anything else to plan around this, or do you have to wait for CPS?
I'm not exactly sure. We can let CPS know in advance the concerns that we have, and we will call in a complaint when the child is born to let them know of our concerns. And once they are assigned, we will have contact with them as soon as possible to discuss everything further. But aside from that, I'm not sure what we can do on the forefront now, other than notifying them of our concerns.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Brooks?
Ma'am,
Sorry, go ahead.
all right. I've done an awful lot of these cases. Can you impress upon this young lady that it looks to me like we're on the brink of her getting her parental rights terminated, both to this child and as soon as the next one is born, if it shows up, and I assume it will, testing positive for drugs. Can you impress upon her the fact that this is not business as usual, that she either gets with the program or her kids are going to be gone, period. I need somebody on the parental side to take this serious. My client's not in the position. Can you impress it upon her this is going on? Because she may not know it.
No, this is bullshit.
If you need to take a minute to compose
Yeah, I
yourself,
do.
ma'am, you're welcome to step out into the hallway.
Can I continue my questioning?
You may.
Ma'am, obviously from this one young woman's reaction, she is not impressed with the fact that she's about to lose her kids. I've done this a long, long time, and I know it's coming. So can you communicate that clearly to her, or have your worker do it so that she takes this seriously?
We absolutely will.
Thank
I'm
you.
not saying you have to use my style of doing it, which I admit is rather blunt, but I don't think she gets it. That's all.
Any questions, Ms. Wilhelm?
Let's see. I did have one, let me see. Oh, I do have just a couple about the maternal grandmother and the approval process that was done for her. What I did note in this array of relatives who were looked at, I noticed that the paternal grandmother and grandfather, they both had CPS history. I did note that the maternal grandmother did not have one. Is that correct?
We weren't able to complete all of the out-of-state clearances, so I can't say whether she does or not out of state. I think the primary concerns with that relative were safety concerns of the home, and we were not sure that she was actually living in the home there that we observed. There was a trailer observed on the property, and we believed that she may be staying in that trailer, but there's also a home that we visited and assessed. But the room she showed us as her bedroom, there was not, she said she slept on the floor. There was nothing in there showing us that it was a bedroom. So in addition to not being able to run the clearances we need to, those were the concerns for that relative.
Okay, so, but I'm just, to be clear on these things, home, problems with the home, safety concerns with the home, they can be rectified, correct? They can be, depending on what they are.
Yes, depending on what they are. And we would, if we were to reassess that relative, we would want to probably look into the trailer that's on the property as well. Because it seemed as though someone was living in that trailer.
Okay, and then I just, I wanted to also, my concern is with keeping these siblings together. I know that's everyone's concern in the case. That is my concern at this point, is to try to keep those siblings together. Do you have any other options with licensed providers who might be able to do that? This birth is imminent.
Right. Keeping the siblings together is our priority as well. We've been talking to the licensing supervisor about homes that may be available, or reassessing the relatives that have rectified the concerns that have been identified. We did home visits, not me personally, but our agency did home visits with each relative in end of September, beginning of October of last year. And we have not reassessed any of the relatives at this point. If they contact us and let us know that the concerns have been rectified, then we would be able to reassess them for placement of both children.
So did they receive a copy of the problems in the home, the safety problems in the home, so they would know what to do? Did the mother receive that?
The grandmother?
Yes, the grandmother.
Yes, grandmother has. Yes.
Okay. She would know what to do.
Yes.
Okay. And then, so you're looking into other options, and do you have any leads on anything yet?
Not at this time. We have not been contacted by relatives yet saying that they have rectified any of the identified concerns, but we will continue. We know that this child is going to be born on February 14th. So we will be working on things between now and then to see what we can come up with for a placement for both siblings.
Okay, and then do you have any concerns about moving Shelby? She's been there 6 months now. If you find someplace where the siblings can be together.
Yes, there would be concern because she has adjusted well to the placement. All of her needs are being met. She's meeting developmental milestones. I think placement with a sibling is always priority, and we would make an effort to locate a permanent placement in the event that reunification cannot occur. So if the siblings can be placed together in a permanent placement in the event that reunification does not happen, I think that would be the best route to go.
Okay, thank you. And you will look immediately into, as Ms. Heiss suggested, some maybe possibility of inpatient treatment for Ms. McGee?
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you. Okay, nothing further.
This placement has potential for permanence for the child that's already born. Is that true?
Yes.
So we'll have to weigh the fact that an additional child, although there's a priority for siblings, there's also a bond already established that could be permanent for the child that's already here, correct?
Correct.
So for example, if the third baby comes along and that the second placement can't take 3, then all 3 children would have to be moved again, and that this could go on and on. So there'll be a balancing of everybody's best interest, right?
Yes, of course.
I think I wondered this and asked Ms. Brinker, and I think she told me that this pregnancy is expected to be the same biological mom and dad as the child that's already in care, correct?
Correct.
So this pregnancy was in place before we opened this case?
Yes.
Because dad's been in jail since we opened the case. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Ms. Thomas?
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. Mr. Brooks, do you wish to call any witnesses today?
Let me ask my client, Mr. Stage? Mr. Stage,
Yes, sir.
is there any, you've heard the testimony so far, right?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that, and would you like to testify today?
Oh, no, I'd like to see, if possible, if my daughter could be put into custody of my mom or my dad. If they can complete the assessment for the house and everything.
Well, let me put you under oath. Have you put under oath? Then I'll let you do that. Now, what's on your mind, sir?
I'd just like to see the end result of this before my kid gets permanently placed into a foster care, which is not with complete relatives. If it was possible that my daughter could be put into my mom's housing or my father's housing, as they both have jobs, have a nice house, always have food, it's always clean. My brother and sisters are being raised properly. I just would rather see my daughter up in somebody that's in my family.
Is there any question in your, well, it's a stupid question. I withdraw it. In any event, it is possible that this is your child, right? The unborn child.
Yes, sir.
All right. Would you be talking about with just the one who's with us now, or both of them?
I mean, it would be better if it was both of them, so the siblings could stay together. I mean, but if it can only, I mean, I don't know. I'd rather them be both together, but if that's not possible, I at least want one of my kids to be able in my family so I can see them whenever I get my shit together. Excuse my language.
Have you I don't know what that noise is, but have you talked to your parents about this possibility?
Yes, both of them actually, and they agree with it. They said that they've had home visits. I never read the report. Apparently something from when I was younger and there was CPS involved, but it wasn't nothing beyond or like on their behalf. It was because of me being an adolescent, not following the rules and everything.
You following, not the rules.
Yeah, that's the reason CPS.
What rules are they claiming you're not following?
I was just misbehaving as a kid, and I thought that I could get my way by having the school get a hold of CPS and shit. So that's why they were involved at my parents' house and everything. It wasn't because they were mistreating me or they were neglecting any of the children in the house.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything else that you heard what I said to the caseworker, did you not?
Yes, sir. I completely understand that. 100%.
You understand we're on the edge here, whether they want to say it plainly or not.
Yeah, no, I've seen that in the paperwork, and I've been thinking it this whole time.
Thank you, sir. I have nothing further.
Yes, sir.
Any questions for this witness?
None, Your Honor.
None, Your Honor.
No.
All right, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else you'd like us to hear from, Mr. Brooks?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Wilhelm?
Let me ask my client.
No, thank you.
You don't want to say anything?
Nope. Ms. Hicks?
No witnesses today, thank you.
All right, comments?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think there's some planning that needs to be done on the back end as it relates to the new child, and I can discuss that with Ms. Brinker and Ms. Beach. It seems like there's a lot of compliance that needs to come into place before we can really take reunification seriously. Again, I'm going to ask the court to schedule the next review hearing to be a permanency planning hearing. And I'm sure we will be back before then with the new child, but at least for this one, we'd like that to be a joint hearing. Thank you.
Comments, Mr. Brooks?
I'm sure this young lady does not understand the significance of a permanency planning hearing. I hope her lawyer explains to her what that means. Other than that, I have no comments.
Ms. Rohan?
Yes, Your Honor. It is early in the case. We do have another baby coming. It doesn't sound like it'll stay, but it is coming. Yeah, but it is early in the case. It's only been 6 months. My client is getting treatment. Her recovery coach has shown up here today to show support. So she is attempting to get some treatment. I spoke with her myself about inpatient. And that would be the best possible thing if that could get worked out and she could get on her way to perhaps beating this. We've seen others with worse addictions than this overcome them. And she has stopped communicating with Mr. Stage. It's been a recent stop, but it's been a hard stop. It had to do with her not being able to see her child, Shelby, on Christmas. And that really, really affected Ms. McGee. And Ms. McGee now has heard, and I believe understands, and I spoke with her frankly about this myself just before court, about the chances that this baby won't come home from the hospital with her. That's it's a big possibility. She has got to face it. And these are things that just might help her to get this problem of substance abuse handled, and also to totally terminate her relationship with Mr. Stage. We can see some of that. She said she's definitely going to do that. It's not worth losing her children over. And I'd just like the court to remember that she does have a good bond with Shelby. Ms. Heiss talked about that. And that's important. And she does go. And we didn't get to hear about whether she comes totally unprepared with no diaper bag, because Ms. Beach, not her fault at all, but Ms. Brinker's not here. She could tell us that. And we don't know. So I mean, she thinks that she was only missing a couple of things, that Ms. Brinker told her she was only missing a couple of things, if she seems to think that. These are just things that we need to look further at. We need to watch more of, and of course, if at all possible, we can to get stronger treatment for Ms. McGee, especially right now, so that the baby might be born somewhat unimpaired. Your Honor, we would ask that we do understand that we'll most likely order a permanency planning hearing at next review, but we do ask that we give this mother, the young mother, that we give her some help and some time to perhaps get over this. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Heiss?
Yes, Your Honor, the goal is reunification, and I think if the new baby were born today, I would advocate for it to not necessarily be with its sibling, because both siblings are going home to mom when she does what she's supposed to do. But I think it's important for McCullough Vargas and for everybody to understand how deep she's in it right now. And we all as a team need to make sure that we're not sugarcoating it, because in addition to being sober from a substance abuse, she has so much more work to do than just that. And it is a huge thing to get to not use when if she has an addiction. She has got elevated scores that are showing a lot of risk of harm to the children. She needs this information. I want her to turn it around and get these two children to grow up with their mom. Science says that's the absolute best for the children and their dad, if he can turn that around too. But it's not going to happen with anybody's effort except mom. So we need all hands on deck to pull in the same direction. And there's a lot of work on the case service plan. If somebody knows that she's positive for methamphetamine, she shouldn't And if she doesn't have a driver's license, we all need to be straightforward with her and help her get these things fixed. Or she's the one that's gonna be very, very sad, and we'll find placements for the girls to grow up. But right now, it's all still possible. And the girls can come home, but there are really high barriers and nobody should enable this mom to think that that's not true. I saw her with her child and she's got lots of good skills. And I think the child knows her as mother, and I'm hoping that she can still be that mother, but right now, we aren't on that path. And if that surprises mom, we all need to stay on the same track. You know, her impulsivity score in the substance abuse psychological evaluation was really elevated. And again, today, you know, she still needs some more tools. So she's got a support team. I think I encourage everyone who works with mom and dad to be in family team meetings so that they can get the information that I can't say individually to other service providers about drug screens and about what's missing at the visitations. Mom should be getting supervision notes so she can see, you know, she might not know that when she shows up to visits with washies for the child's nose and they're frozen from being in her car, that might be held against her. So she might not know what we're talking about, that she wasn't prepared. She thinks she packed the diaper bag and had it in her car the day before, so she was super ready. I heard her say that. But she used the foster care wipies because they weren't frozen. So maybe it's simple things that need to be fixed, but she deserves that information and I'm all on board to help her with reunification, but I can't do it for her. The caseworker can't want it more than she does, and it is early in the case, and I hope we have a good long time to work with her, but she has got to make a decision to get sober and take on services. Thank you.
Thank you. The court finds all interested parties are given notice for purposes of today's review hearing. I do find reasonable efforts towards a goal of reunification are being made by the department. Those were detailed in the testimony of Ms. Beach and also detailed in the report and attachments that the court received in anticipation of today's hearing. I also find Ms. Heiss to be in satisfaction of her obligations. Thank you as always. Thank you. Our next review will be a permanency planning hearing. That will be April 9th at 2:30 p.m. in addition to our regular review. I have significant concerns when I see a mom who is pregnant using substances including methamphetamine, amphetamine, and THC. I expressed those concerns last time we were here. It will be the order of the court that if there is another positive screen for any of those things, then I will expect the department to file a motion to show cause this person, this mom, immediately and to request incarceration in order to provide as much time as possible for this child to be substance free prior to entering our world, frankly. I've done that on other occasions. So you might want to take a very serious look, Ms. McGee, at requesting some inpatient services so that you can decide to do that on your own rather than waiting until you test positive and having me transport you to the Lemon County Jail awaiting the birth of your child. So that being said, I'm also asking the department to look very seriously at what the plan will be for both children, taking into account, of course, Ms. Heiss's strong advocacy on behalf of the child that we currently have in care. Where this current child is placed is the safest and is the least restrictive under the circumstances, given that Ms. McGee still has very high barriers to overcome for reunification, including, of course, the substance abuse, the treatment for mental health, working on driver's license, housing, appropriate housing, and many of the concerns that were raised in the psychological evaluation, which would require much more dedication to parenting education. So I'm hoping very much that you'll take the offer for services seriously in the initial reporting period, because my job, our job, is to look out for the best interests of these children. And sometimes that doesn't feel very good to parents that can't or choose not to engage in services. But it's nothing against you, either one of you. It's because my job is to make sure that these children grow up in a safe, substance-free environment so that they can potentially become successful adults as well. So we'll be back for another review on April 9th at 2:30. and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you, Your Honor.